Hey, and welcome back to another episode. If you've ever set a goal like lose weight, manage stress better, build a morning routine, start your own business, and found yourself slipping back into old patterns, this might be why. Most people try to change their behaviors without first changing their identity that drives those behaviors. Because lasting transformation isn't about forcing behaviors and new habits. It's about becoming the kind of person who has the beliefs and that naturally lives in the way that that person would when they have those habits. And that's what I want to dedicate today to. By the end of this episode, you will feel supercharged in your motivation to make identity shifts by showing you 3 science-backed reasons why lasting change starts with who you believe you are, not what you do. You won't want to miss the third one because I explain the impressive neuroscience behind all of this. And secondly, you understand how goal setting alone will rarely get you to achieve your goals and what to do instead. And in my next episode, I'll walk you through the practical steps to shift your identity so you naturally take the actions that align with your goals. That's the how-to part. Today is the why. So before we dive in, grab a pen and paper because along the way, I will share some journaling prompts to help you reflect on your current identity and to map out the identity that you want to have. Let's begin with a short story to bring this to life. Today, I work as a double certified health coach, medicine yoga teacher, breathwork guide, speaker, and today's topic is really at the core of much of the work I do with both individual clients, but also business clients. But it hasn't always come naturally to me. I had to learn by doing. When I was recovering from a whole maze of symptoms of chronic stress, more on that in previous episodes, I checked off all the things on my physical and mental health to-do list. Meditation, anti-inflammatory diet, gut healing supplement protocol, movement, etc. But here's what I learned the hard way. No health-promoting habit sticks and becomes effortless until you change the way you see yourself. For years, I still identified as the overachiever who never felt enough, no matter how much I was doing or trying to achieve. So my solution was always to do more to fix myself. Recognize that? If so, you're definitely not alone. It's one of the most common forms of self-sabotage, actually. But thankfully, science shows us that we can change how we see ourselves and therefore change our behaviors, which in turn changes our reality. Because here's the thing, every choice you make reflects your identity. And your identity is reflected in every choice you make. It's a loop, either one that is supportive or a self-sabotaging loop. At first, your actions build your identity, but once that identity is rooted in you, that is, you believe it as the truth, it starts driving your actions automatically. Everything changed for me when I started seeing myself, identifying as the woman without the symptoms, with a regulated nervous system, a gut I didn't even have to think about, a regulated pain-free period, going about my day like a normal human being, but also feeling very vibrant and energized. And suddenly things like visualization meditations, skipping the fasted, caffeinated morning runs, saying no to alcohol, or setting boundaries around my energy didn't feel like chores anymore. They were just what someone like me does. And that's the secret. Your identity drives your behavior. You might call it faking it till you make it, and to some extent it is, but it goes much deeper than that. At first, it might feel like pretending, but soon you realize that you're not faking anything. You're simply returning to the person that you were always meant to be beneath all the layers of conditioning and expectations that you've carried around on your shoulders since childhood. And over time, you're literally rewiring your brain and aligning your daily actions with the version of you that already exists and the one that you're consciously choosing to wake up as, not the one you're subconsciously allowing to steer your life. So take note of this. You always have a choice to keep voting for your old conditioned self or to cast your vote for your free, authentic, empowered self. Every choice you make is a vote for either one of those identities. And as your votes compound, something powerful happens if you choose the authentic, empowered version of you. You stop wishing to become her and you simply start being her or him. You start to live his or her reality. So if you're not already convinced that this is the foundation for you achieving anything in your life, let's dive into the 4 science-backed reasons why identity drives long-lasting, effortless behavior change, guiding you towards your dream life. Science-backed reason number 1, research in psychology. Psychology research shows that we're most motivated and consistent when our behaviors match our identity and values, a key idea in self-determination theory. If you see yourself as a person who exercises, going to the gym isn't a chore, it's just who you are. And for me, that was the case growing up. My dad made sure we were exercising several times a week, and in the weekends we were doing sports or some workouts in the garden together. So moving my body has always felt as natural as brushing your teeth. I don't even question it. But identity can just as well anchor you in habits that don't serve you. Maybe you see yourself as the life of the party, and part of that identity involves drinking heavily every weekend. When your friends expect it too, the behavior becomes even harder to change, because changing it would feel like betraying who you think you are and who you think they think you are. This is why willpower alone rarely creates sustainable behavior change. If you've told yourself, I'm the fun one who always drinks, saying no to a drink will feel like friction, like you're fighting your own self-concept, that image of you that you have. But when you start to shift that identity with self-concept to, I'm someone who connects deeply with other people without needing alcohol, then that shift feels natural, easy, and effortless, even freeing. As James Clear puts it in Atomic Habits, his book, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. So your habits aren't just the things that you do, they're evidence for who you believe you are and who you're continuing to become every single day. There's a saying that beautifully adds to this and that I have to remind myself of daily when I have to do something that I don't really want to do. How you do one thing is how you do everything. When you make your bed, choose nourishing foods, or pause to breathe before reacting to a comment or whatever, these aren't isolated actions. They're votes for your future self and how she or he shows up in the world. And as those actions compound, your identity solidifies around them, creating a self-reinforcing loop of who you believe you are and what you consistently do. Here are your journal prompts to reflect on this. Number 1, does the way that you currently see yourself support the habits you want to create or keep you tied to habits that you've outgrown? And number 2, what identity are your daily actions voting for right now? Okay, let's move on to science-backed reason number 2, cognitive dissonance and how your brain craves consistency. When your identity and actions don't align, your brain experiences what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, an inner tension inside of you between who you think you are and what you are doing. For example, if you identify as someone who never finishes things, part of you will keep self-sabotaging subconsciously to stay consistent with that identity. It's not that you're lazy, it's that your brain wants harmony between your identity and your behavior. And the same can work in your favor. When you upgrade your identity, for example, to I'm someone who follows through, or I'm someone who keeps promises to myself and to others, your actions naturally align with that. Your brain wants to prove you right. And I will explain the neuroscience behind that in a while. When your brain recognizes a behavior that aligns with the chosen identity, it actually rewards you with a hit of dopamine, that feel-good neurotransmitter that helps you then to learn and repeat an action so that you get the dopamine hit again and again and again. The neurotransmitter linked to motivation, learning, and positive reinforcement. And that feel-good dopamine hit makes it easier and more appealing to repeat the behavior over and over, strengthening both the neural pathway tied to that behavior and the new identity that it represents. And this is why identity shifts are so powerful. Once you decide who you are, your brain and your behavior begin reorganizing themselves to stay consistent with that new self-concept. And dopamine helps to back that up so you keep repeating the actions tied to this identity. Here's your journal prompt for reflection on this. What old identity reinforcing stories might you be subconsciously trying to prove true, even though they no longer serve you? What's that inner narrative inside of you? All right, let's move on to science-backed reason number 3, the neuroscience of identity shifts, basically the neuroscience of everything I've explained so far. Several years ago, neuroscientists thought that the brain was stuck after a certain age, basically that we can learn new things and therefore rewire it to think differently and therefore act differently. But now we know that the brain is plastic. Let me explain. Even at an adult age, your brain is constantly wiring and rewiring itself, a process called neuroplasticity, at least if you give it new information that helps it to expand and create new neural connections. It's one of the core principles that my members learn to apply in practice in my Revive to Thrive membership, because it's really at the foundation of all behavior change and wanting to achieve anything of your dream life. So every time you act in line with your old identity, you reinforce the existing neural pathways tied to that identity, keeping you stuck in the same behavioral patterns. It's a reinforcing loop, as we talked about earlier. And every time you act in line with the new identity, you strengthen those neural pathways instead. This is behavior change in practice. At first, it feels effortful with those new neural pathways, like walking through an overgrown forest where no path exists yet. That's literally what's going on in your brain as you forge new neural connections. But with repetition, something beautiful happens. That old path tied to the old identity and the old habits starts to grow over. You're pruning or removing those neural circuits the less you engage in them. Meanwhile, the new pathway becomes smoother, clearer, and easier to walk along. Over time, you've literally rewired your brain to match this new identity. So rather than this one going like this, that one loosens and this one is created. And the habits tied to this new identity that once felt forced now become automatic. Now here's where it gets really fascinating. I'll explain the 4 key brain networks that work together to make all of this possible. First of all, the reticular activating system, the RAS. The RAS is like the bouncer to the door of your attention span. It lives in your brainstem and filters the flood of sensory input that you receive every second, letting in only what you subconsciously consider important. Because your sensory systems, like your eyes and ears and skin, sound roughly 11 million bits of information per second to the brain, mostly through the eyes, but only around 40 to 50 bits of information are consciously processed by your brain. And that means that your reticular activating system and associated networks of attention filter out 99.999% of sensory input. It doesn't even go into your conscious realization. So once you've decided something is important, like you becoming your healthiest, most energized self, your RAS will start scanning your environment for cues and opportunities that support that goal, letting them take the VIP line into your conscious attention. And the RAS works in tandem with the salience network. And this network works higher up in your brain, identifying what is meaningful or emotionally relevant or charged. It's like your brain's importance rate, constantly assessing your inner and outer world to decide what deserves your attention. When something feels emotionally charged or aligned with your values or your identity, your salience network tags it as significant. So it's like the picker at the club that tells the RAS, this one's VIP, let them in. How do you like my clubbing references? I believe many people can at least recognize themselves in it. And then we have the task positive network, also called the executive control or attention network, which kicks in when you focus and take action. Once the salience network and reticular activating system have decided what is important, the bouncer and the picker have decided who gets lit into your attention span, then your task positive network helps you to actually do something about it, turning intention into an actual behavior, an action. So together, they all create this beautiful flow where the salience network decides what's meaningful to you. The reticular activating system decides what gets your attention. The task positive network decides what gets done. And underneath all of this is the default mode network, the part of your brain that is active when you're not focused on external tasks like writing an email, but rather on self-reflection, on imagination, and on your inner narrative. It's where your sense of self and personal story live, the mental autobiography that answers the question, who am I? So when you begin to see yourself differently, when your inner narrative evolves to reflect this new identity, the default mode network updates that self-concept. And as it does, the other networks that we talked about, the salience, the RAS, and the task positive networks, automatically reorganize to support that version of you. Isn't that really cool? And that is why identity work is so powerful and makes habit change much less effortful. So once you emotionally connect to your future self, then your brain starts treating that as the truth and literally reshapes itself through these mechanisms I've just talked about to make it your new normal, taking you much faster to living that life of that person. So here's your journal prompt. What is one small action that would strengthen the neural pathway of your future self? And one old habit that you're ready to let go of? And there you have it. 3 science-backed reasons why sustainable behavior change follows identity shifts. And I hope this monologue, I want to say conversation, but it's not, empowers you to reflect on who you believe yourself to be and start showing up as this most authentic, aligned, and empowered self, because your reality will always rise to meet that version of you. So be him, be her today. Now, tying it back to how we started today's session, why do so many people struggle to reach the goals that they've set for themselves, or they slip back into old patterns once they actually meet a goal? By now, you know the answer. Their identity isn't on board, because there's an important distinction between identity and goals. Goals are results-oriented, like I want to lose 10 kilos. Identity is systems-oriented, like I'm the kind of person who makes choices that supports my body. The first is about having, the second is about being. And now you understand the science behind this. Your inner narrative literally shapes what your brain sees as important and then what actions it will take to support that belief, that identity. So if you focus only on your goals, you might reach them temporarily, but often fall back because the underlying identity hasn't shifted. But when you focus on identity, change becomes long-lasting, because even after a goal is achieved, the behaviors remain to support that identity. And that is exactly what we focus on inside the coaching of Revive to Thrive, because you can have all the information in the world about health and wellness and behavior change, but if you don't shift how you perceive yourself on the daily and the situations that you face, it's nearly impossible to create the lasting transformation towards a new reality, a new life you want to live where you feel your best. So next time you set a goal, don't just ask yourself, what do I want to achieve? Ask yourself, who do I want to become? Because the fastest way to your dream life isn't to do more. I mean, it involves doing, but it's to become the person who naturally does those things, and the actions will follow. If this all resonates, then subscribe for more science-backed, experience-tested insights and tools, and don't miss my next episode where I'll guide you through the practical steps to put today's learnings into action. And if you're curious about the Revive to Thrive membership, check out the pinned link below. It's where we bring these concepts to life through mindset shifts, identity shifts, lifestyle upgrades, and nervous system practices, so you can also feel safe in holding the life that you're creating with your mind and with your actions. Always rooting for you, and see you in the next one.